Okie dokie. Cool. So our agenda, I'll give you a quick introduction as to, what do I know about this? And then secondly, I'll talk about what do we mean by data scientists. Third is the reason you're here is the interview. And then hopefully by the end of this, you will feel prepared to ace it, or at least know how to prepare how to ace it. All right, so a little bit about my company. I work for a company called Birchworks. It was started by someone named Linda Birch, who's kind of an icon in data science analytics recruiting. We do permanent placement as well as contractors, and we have SOW line of business where we run data science projects that I oversee this part, and then other people help with the hiring and helping companies find candidates. One thing that Linda Birch wanted to do early on is specialize, and she specialized in data science and analytics, data engineering, AI, and market research, basically anything related to data. If you're looking for an accountant, I have no idea how to help you. Maybe go to the accounting organizations, but if you're looking for someone that works in data, we are the company. We have 125,000 people in our network, so, kind of cool. All right, where's my entry slide? I thought I had an intro slide. Hold on, maybe I hit it. Sorry, Zach, 1 second. Oh, there it is. I must have hidden my slide. I was being shy that day. Unhide. There we go. Okay, so I'm Beverly Wright. I have a PhD and a CAP, and y'all know what a PhD is. I've heard it stands for something else, but it's Doctor of Philosophy. And the CAP is Certified Analytics Professional, which a lot of people are very interested in this. Zach, if you get a second, maybe you can put the link to CAP by Informs in the chat. The Certified Analytics Professional designation offered by Informs is something that's fairly exclusive. About 1,000 people in the world are CAP, and it's a way of showing your technical chops. So there are different types of certifications. I personally have looked at several of them, and I feel like CAP is the best. So that's a CAP certification. I'm also head of data science at Birchworks. We talked about that. I'm the president of Informs. They have an analytics society. I'm the chair of Technology Association of Georgia, also known as TAG for short, Data Science Analytics Society. And there's a ton of stuff that we do at TAG. For one, I'm the host of a podcast called Tag Data Talk. And if you happen to find that link as well, Zach, that would be really cool in the chat if you don't mind. If not, I can get to this stuff later. Tag Data Talk is interview format. We have been in operation for about 5 years. I post once a month. Well, I don't post it, okay? I'm just the host. But we post once a month. I interview some really, really cool people. Serena Huang was my last interview for anyone interested in people analytics and HR analytics. She's really cool. Before her was Tom Davenport. I've interviewed a lot of very interesting leaders like the CDAO of Inspire Brands, Colin Coleman, who I know for sure is hiring right now. Lots of people. So take a look at Tag Data Talk whenever you have a moment. Also, we do something called the For Good Initiative at TAG, which is a bunch of nonprofit-based stuff. And so the gist of it is we have several people that are interested in doing a project, and they'll sign up and say, like, I want to volunteer to do this project. And we work with a nonprofit. So last year we did Enduring Hearts to help kids that get heart transplant live longer lives. And we have done Erase Child Trafficking to get rid of human trafficking among children, which is it's a horrible thing, this human trafficking. If you're not familiar with it, it's absolutely something you should look into and help figure out, like, how do we reduce this? How do we identify it? How do we do something about it? But those are some of the things that we do with the For Good Initiative. We typically reduce homelessness, addiction, like opioid addiction. We help the medically vulnerable. We help children, orphans, those sorts of things, veterans. Third, we have a learning series, and we actually have a learning series coming up in April and May. It's called Data Thinking Workshops. It's a 3-part series, and at the completion of it all, you get to earn a certificate from Technology Association of Georgia, which is really cool. And then, not lastly, but the last thing I'll mention is we have a competition called Master Modeler Competition that we run through TAG, and it's active right now. We just went through round 1 eliminations, and we're in the finalist round. And this another link, if you happen to find it, Zach, is Master Modeler Competition, March 31st at Cox Enterprises. You can attend to watch the judges assess the presentations in real time. So that's a super fun thing that we do. This year is in collaboration with the National Center for Housing and Child Welfare. And guys, if you've never seen a presentation in full for a cradle to grave kind of data science project, this is a great place to see it. There in the morning, there are 3 teams. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think it's morning. Morning, there are 3 teams from the academic track. And in the afternoon, there are 3 teams from the practitioner track. 3 different companies, if not more, are in the afternoon. I think it's Marathon, Petroleum. I don't remember the other 2, but anyway, there's 3 companies, maybe 4 represented in the afternoon. So please try to check that out. And then the last thing I do, and I know you're like, how do you do all that? I just have really good teams, okay? But the last thing I do is I serve as the Director of Data Science Programs at University of Georgia Executive Education. And this is the one, if you're from Atlanta, this is the one that's right near Lenox Mall, not the one in Athens. So those are kind of the things that I do. I've been in analytics and data science for 31 years. I've worked at Cox Communications, Truist, formerly SunTrust. Wasn't SunTrust such a better name for that company? I don't know about Truist. Anyway, and I worked for Georgia Power, Southern Company, Atlanta Gas Light, that cluster of utility companies. So I did that. I've also spent 20-something years in academia, teaching undergrads, masters, and doctoral students at Georgia Tech and University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. And I've been on the consulting side for about 13 years, working for companies like Nielsen. So that's a little about myself. Hopefully that tells you why I sort of kind of have a little bit of background on this. Okay, data scientist. What the heck is a data scientist? Does anybody really know? Well, there are lots of roles in data. And are you guys seeing my advanced slide? It's giving away all my secrets, isn't it? Maybe I should share the other side. Do you see both of these slides, Zach, or is it just the one?
I think we see both of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I see both slides.
Okay. Nabbit. All right. Let me see if I can go to this side here.
Excellent notes, though. We like it.
I'm going to go to screen 2, so y'all only get to see. There you go. Okay, so now you only see the one slide, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So the idea was to give you a little surprise of like, ta-da, to be able to see the lines show up. Oh, well, now it's not doing it. There we go. Okay, so roles in data. When you think about data types of roles, the data and IT are sort of different than really data science. The data people are responsible for doing things like governing data, for keeping up with the access. IT people are spending a ton of the company's money with platforms and tools. And so those are kind of different from data science, really. They usually have a different boss. They report into usually a CDO or an IT or VP or senior director at a minimum of IT, or sometimes it's called data and platforms. Whereas the other side is the business intelligence, data science, machine learning, AI, and some companies are doing optimization, which is great. And so these are typically what people refer to, just anything along the Gartner chart, really. These are what people think about when they think about data science oftentimes. And the BI is a little tricky because that's, some people call the whole field analytics. That's generally accepted. And then the data science is usually everything but the BI, right? Now, the sort of question mark that we're seeing is data engineering. And it's sort of in this, this bridge, and that it's tying together the data, the IT, and then the data science, machine learning, all that. The other thing that's interesting about data engineering is that you can use data science techniques and machine learning to help you with the data engineering, to help you do data engineering. So you can create models to optimize your data, which is another reason why it's sort of tricky as to where data engineering kind of lives. But typically I find that data engineering resources and people are very good at sort of handling the data and IT people. Because typically, if you think about the trio, there's sort of data IT, data science, and there's the business. And this data engineer sort of acts as the liaison to the data and IT groups. Okay, which is great, because otherwise they might drive us crazy and vice versa. So that's what we mean when I'm talking about data scientists. I'm usually referring to these people, and the business intelligence really more of a analytics categorization than data science. Y'all feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat if you need or want to do so. Okay, skills of a data scientist. You've seen probably this chart before. It's inaccurately drawn with 3 equal bubbles, but in reality, when I started in 1991 at Georgia State and studied decision sciences, and nobody knew what decision science was, and my parents even made fun of me, but that's okay. But back then, math and stats was like, that was the thing. You know, just you got to know math and stats really well to be in decision sciences, are now called really data science, which is slightly different, but still. Now that has moved elsewhere. And if anyone can be so brave as to give us an estimate of where they think the bigger bubble is growing, which of the 3 do you think has kind of overtaken the math and stats? Any guesses?
Is it the computing applications one?
Yeah, the computing applications, it's to be able to leverage a tool or some kind of platform that will use the math and stats. Like there's other people that program that stuff in, but a lot of data scientists now are responsible for just being able to know how to use the applications and to write the code, to call on things, but they don't necessarily have as much of the math and stats. We sort of refer to it as a black box, but it doesn't have to be black. You just open it up, right? Or create it as transparent. So that math and stats knowledge has sort of shrunk a little on the, not in importance. I still think it's like really important. I'm actually a little worried about how people are graduating now without that information as much. But their computing and computer science and be able to apply and leverage a tool has become more important as we've got more data, more business problems to solve, and just so much more work to do. That's been our way of becoming more efficient. To give you a couple of examples, data scientists, again, sort of finishing my definition of that before I move forward, but data scientists usually use things like predictive models. And this is not my use case, although I've done plenty of use cases. This actually looks like a structural equation model. And wait, where did I go? Oh, am I on? Zach, can you see me?
I see you, but your screen is no longer in view. And if you're talking right now, you're on mute. Give us one moment while we figure out these technical difficulties. Ah, let me unmute you. Um, good.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. You better not show that trick to my husband.
Mum's the word.
Yeah, thank you. He's a talker, and I'm a talker, so it's always like that. Okay, so anyway, sorry about that. I think my internet might be a little unstable after 5 p.m. But typically, data scientists, this looks like a structural equation model. It's not mine. I pulled it from the interwebs. But typically, they build predictive types of models. This one is clearly looking at consumer happiness and loyalty, which loyalty, of course, is like a really important construct to understand. But these are the kinds of models that a data scientist might build to help understand some phenomenon. Based on 2022, the average median salary for a data scientist as an individual contributor is 115, and as a manager is about 200. That's probably about 120 something now. We just took in a job today for a permanent. I think it was 130. It was 110 to 130. It's a good company. I really like the hiring manager. So yeah, that's about right for 2023. 110 to 130 is a good number. Now y'all are all going to go back to your boss and be like, Beverly Wright said I should be making more. Another example, machine learning, also done by data scientists. These people make a little bit more, by the way, but typically these are unstructured. Is the biggest difference is the data set itself is unstructured, the data sets. And as y'all probably already know, these are supervised, which is usually, sort of the quote easier, you've got the guardrails up, versus unsupervised types of machine learning. So data scientists are known for both predictive models like this one, or clustering, classification, regression, more machine learning based models like some of these. Jesse. Oh, he might not be able to unmute himself.
Oh, did someone ask you a question?
Jesse has his hand raised.
Jesse, do you mind putting your question in the chat?
Hopefully he's not driving.
Yeah. But go ahead and continue on, and once the question comes in, then
Okay.
I'll bring it up.
Okay, that works. Great. So now that we have a better understanding of what I mean by data scientist, and again, that definition can vary quite a bit by company, by individual, by it's Tuesday, or well, today's actually Monday, but it can vary quite a bit based on who you're talking to. But my view of data science and developing this content is those that are doing that kind of work I mentioned with those sorts of skills. So next I want to talk to you a little bit about the interview itself and just sort of the logistics of it.
Dr. Wright, would you rather take questions at the end, or do you want to address Jesse's question now?
If it's relevant to some of this, we can go ahead and take it. Yeah.
So you mentioned how can such models as those help understand phenomena or help in decision making?
Excellent question. Models like this can help with decision making or understanding a certain phenomenon by basically giving you weights. And so think about your general form of a linear model. To give you a super easy example, is y equals mx plus b. Y'all remember that, right? Y equals mx plus b. And if you think about y being something like loyalty, and you have mx, and then forget the b for a second because that's like a random number. Not random, but it's a just ignore the b for a minute. So the mx is where to focus. The x's are the things that impact loyalty. So consumer satisfaction and consumer happiness have a direct impact on loyalty. You see these lines right here. I'm gonna have to get my glasses out. Hold on. And yes, they are broken. See, So consumer sat and consumer happiness impact loyalty. Now, how much do they impact loyalty is the B, the M, Y equals MX plus C. The M are the weights. So you can tell that consumer satisfaction has a stronger impact on loyalty compared to consumer happiness. You can also see that both of these relationships are positive. As one goes up, the other goes up. And you can see that they're, well, it doesn't show it here exactly, but I know for sure that's significant. It's got to be significant unless the sample size is like 5, but I'm sure it's not. So this is significant and this is significant. You can also tell, well, how do you even measure happiness, you know? And so these 3 constructs here, which it doesn't tell you exactly what they are, it just says happy 1, happy 2, happy 3. These 3 constructs here represent consumer happiness. And there's reflective, there's 2 different types of ways that you can do this. But anyway, so these 3 things hang real closely together and they represent consumer happiness. So the idea and where this adds value is you say, okay, I'm trying to get people loyal. I definitely want to get people loyal because it impacts our bottom line. We get more revenue. We have to spend less money going out and finding new customers, blah, 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 right? Loyalty is generally accepted as a good thing. And there are tons of evidence to show why loyalty benefits a company from a financial standpoint. Okay, so if we know for sure we want to have loyalty, then we have to build this predictive model. Well, now we can tell that consumer satisfaction, which is represented by blah, blah, and blah right here. And we also know consumer happiness, which is represented by blah, blah, and blah. Well, gosh, now we have like real objectives. Now we can say, without saying like, oh, well, make them happier, you know, increase their loyalty. Like, well, crap, I don't know how to increase their loyalty. This actually tells you how. More specifically, it tells you that loyalty is impacted by this, and these 3 things feed into the SAT overall, which means all you got to do is make sure they're happy here, here, and here. And that's going to ultimately drive your loyalty, at least to some extent. And then the other thing to focus on is this one. So it helps you understand what impacts or drives or influences a certain phenomenon because of these magical weights, these M's that are all over the place. These little coefficients are what are so important with models. It tells you the significance, the positive, negative, the direction, and the level of impact. Those 3 big things, which are a big deal. I hope that's not overkill.
No, I think it was very, very well answered. One more question came in while you were talking.
Sure.
What should you use, a logistic regression or an ANN with one dense layer, and why? And let me know if you know what that means.
It depends. I actually call it an analytics recipe. I should have called it an analytics menu, but when I was teaching at Georgia Tech, I called it analytics recipe. And when I was teaching it, well, I've always called it that. So it just kind of stayed legacy. But basically you want to look at in order to figure out which method you want to use, you basically need to look at things like what's the structure of the data and what are you trying to predict or explain or group. Usually you have one of those 3 goals. You're predicting, you're explaining, or you're grouping. And you got to figure out the structure of the data. You also have to figure out if you're pointing to or you're trying to explain, predict one construct or multiple constructs. Now, I know this is a highly, highly misused term, but if you're pointing to one construct, that's called univariate, right? So you could have like a bazillion things that are driving this one construct of, say, loyalty. Whereas if you have multiple Y's, now you're talking multivariate, okay? The term multivariate has to do with the number of Y's, the thing you're trying to understand and predict, not the number of X's. That's actually called multiple. Multivariate is the number of Y's. Highly, highly, highly misused. But please look it up. It's take a look at Joe Hare's book. it's in his like 30th edition. The guy's awesome. He was at LSU, Louisiana State University, for a long time, and then he went to Kennesaw State University to follow his kids, and then his kids got up and moved. How rude. But Joe Hare, Hair, wrote a book called Multivariate Data Analysis, and that is one of the better ways to understand which techniques fit the data and how do you drill down and figure that out. So I'd have to, this is not, like I said, this is not my model. I would have to know more about the data and what they were trying to really do and all that before I could answer that definitively. But those are some hints as to how you figure that out. Cool, cool. Okay, the data science interview. There are layers of players. Isn't that clever, Zach? You like that? So
Yeah, that was good.
Typically, there are at least 3 layers, but oftentimes there are multiple layers. So usually it's the boss, what would be your equivalent, and if there's a layer below you, the people that are more junior. I don't want to say the term subordinate, it sounds terrible. But sometimes you'll even have the boss's boss, and then the boss, and your teammates, and the junior level. But one person to mention in here that's pretty important is the stakeholders. Now, does anybody know what I mean when I talk about, like, who are the stakeholders? Like people standing there holding stakes? What's a stakeholder? Anybody know?
I think people know. It's the big boss in charge.
These are the people that are typically asking the question or funding the research or the data science project, but they're the ones that, at the end of the day, these are the people you want to make happy. Sometimes they're internal. Most of the time they're internal. So if operations comes to you and says, we want to figure out how to optimize this workflow, it's usually the person in charge of operations. So there are layers of players in the job interview. One note I meant to mention too is this is not really different for senior level versus junior level. The only real difference is what percentage some of these things are exist. So when I'm talking about, like, here are the things you need to have in your toolkit and your skills before you go into an interview, it's pretty much the same thing for senior level people compared to junior level people. It's just you have to dial up certain parts and dial down other parts depending on whether you're a senior level or a junior level. And I'll talk through some of that. Interview formats. Tests. There are plenty of tests that are either done in person or online after the in-person interview. So plenty of tests that are given as part of the interview. There are also take-home exercises. And some of the interesting work that KITT Labs is doing helps get people through this sort of scenario. So it's a real neat way of knowing, like, okay, well, who needs to rise to the top? So if you're not familiar with KITT Labs, take a look. So tests, there are take-home exercises. Oftentimes you're talking to a panel, and you usually have at least a couple of individual one-on-one interviews. So these are different formats, the main ones. Okay, the thing nobody wants to hear is behind the scenes. I know this is a little bit unpopular and you're not going to believe me, but did I mention, this is why I bragged about myself up front, because I wanted to make sure, I wasn't trying to brag about myself. I just want you to believe me. Like, I worked at a recruiting company. I know this stuff, okay? So I'm not making it up. They're checking your social media. So please don't think they're not. Okay, hiring managers oftentimes will go behind the scenes before an interview because they don't want to waste time in talking to somebody that doesn't align with their ways, right? Their ways and their culture. And I'll talk about culture in a second. So they are definitely checking your LinkedIn profiles. If you don't have hardly anything on your profile, you don't even have a picture posted, you haven't posted any content, you're not contributing to the community in any kind of way, that's not horrible, but it's also not going to make you stand out. right? So it's not really, I'm saying it's not necessarily, depending on the job, it's not necessarily enough just to not have anything bad on there. A lot of times you want to have something good on there, right? And as if she needs any more followers, she does not. But there's someone I want to recommend. She has like a bazillion followers. And she's one of my, I'm very proud to say, she's one of my mentees. And when I first met her, she had like 12,000 followers or 8,000, something like that. Now she has like 70 because she gives so much authentic, good quality content, mostly about SQL, but also sometimes it's like just her being a person. You know, it's a super interesting. Jess Ramus, I put her name in the chat. She's in Georgia. She went to Berry, and that's where I met her, was Berry College several years ago, and then she went to UGA, and she's in my orbit now. So she's on my board. She does all kinds of things for me. So they are checking your social. They oftentimes will check your prior companies and see if they have mutual connections with people that you've worked with in the past. They may even contact them and say, what did you think about this person? How did things go, etc. So I know this is not a very popular slide and you might not like it, but they definitely are checking you out. All right. Question types. Number one, the easy stuff, technical. This is the easiest stuff. So of the three categories, this should be the easiest for you. So technical, the big skills are SQL, right? But I thought we were talking about data science. I know, but it's like not knowing how to type or something and going into journalism. It's just a thing. So you got to know SQL. Even if you've used SQL through some of these automatic kinds of programs like Enterprise Guide or Enterprise Miner or Alteryx, like as long as you've used SQL in some format and it doesn't look completely foreign to you, then you're usually okay depending on the job. But you got to know SQL. The second is Python seems to be overtaking R, and usually people say, hiring managers will say, I want them to know one language really well and then some secondary language. So Python, I call that Python +1 is usually the way to go. If you had to pick, and if you're trying to figure out what that most important one is, I would say it's probably Python +1. Okay, thirdly is data management. Wait a minute, I thought we were talking about data science, but many times in data science, we're having to do quite a bit of data management. And those data management skills are super important anyway. So even companies that are very large that have like a designated data engineering team, you're still going to have some data management. And then fourthly, methods like any kind of predictive method or a clustering method, factor, PCA, K-means, those are usually pretty valuable. If you should definitely know at least, obviously linear regression, obviously GLM, definitely logit, and then K-means, PCA, factor, those are pretty standard. So there's like 6, those top 5 or 6 you should definitely know. And then lastly, on the technical of 3, I'm doing technical, cultural, and personality. But of the technical, you need 3 really good use cases. And if you don't have 3, I'll tell you how to come up with 3. So you need 3 very start to finish use cases. And I know it's really difficult. I've done literally hundreds of use cases, and it's even difficult for me. But if at all possible, try to have the results, meaning like how much impact did this have on the company? Were they able to acquire more customers? Were they able to save more money? Were they able to create a better impression? Like what did it do? How did it ultimately help the bottom line? So cradle to grave, from problem framing all the way to impact or results. Cool. They will ask. Number 2, cultural. And why the heck do I have a picture of vegan lasagna on here? Well, because what they want is kind of like a noodle or some sauce or cheese spelled with a Z because I'm vegan, or, you know, something that's part of this lasagna. Because what I mean by that is, you see how the layers of lasagna, you can still kind of tell the individual ingredients. It still has, each one still has the integrity of itself, but they go together. If someone just gave you a pile of these little green onions, are you just going to sit there and eat a pile of them? Probably not. If someone just gave you like a ton of noodles and they don't have any sauce on them or anything, you're not, you know, it's not very appetizing. But together, you know, they want you to be an individual in the sense that you still are an individual, but they also want you to fit into their culture. There's a lot to be said about that. Typically, and this is where you have to really dial it up if you're talking about a senior or a data science leader level person, but they need someone that can navigate. And by navigate, I mean they know who to talk to, they know what to say, they know how to get things done. They just know how to navigate. That's a tough thing to do, is to navigate in corporate America. They got to know how to navigate a system with data science at the forefront. Okay, and they will ask you in the interview for examples of way that you've, you know, influenced the natives, or that you've won over the business, or that you worked with the data and IT teams to make something happen. So navigation and influence within a company is now a very critical data science skill. Also, it's not enough to have great models. They won't sell themselves. You oftentimes have to advocate on behalf of the work that you guys are doing in data science, as well as the practice in and of itself. So just data science, period. Ooh, that's way too bright. You have to have some sort of ability. Ooh, that's way too bright. Let me turn on my light. Hold on, I'll be right back. It got dark all of a sudden, Zach. Sorry about that. But you have to have some sort of ability to, okay, good, to champion your cause. You have to talk people into like buying the story in a sense. So you have to develop a community where people talk good about your work. And then lastly, and this again, you have to really dial the stakeholder relationships up if you're a leader. And oftentimes if you're not a leader, you just have to like, don't mess things up. So stakeholder relations, and we talked about what is a stakeholder. Oftentimes it's an internal client or other people that are interested in what you're doing. And so this type of thing is important to make sure that you're communicating in a way and you're holding that relationship and you've built some sort of trust. And oftentimes this will mean getting to know their business in a way that like is tough. Like you don't necessarily care about the call center, but you're analyzing their data, and so you really have to immerse yourself. I remember one of the more impactful projects that I did on data science for good, and we were about to work with this data set for a nonprofit called Davis Direction Foundation, which if any of y'all are in Marietta, Georgia, it's right near there. This is a foundation that was created based on a mom that lost her son from opioid addiction. And it turned out his son just so happened to be best friend with Darren Waller, who's an NFL player. If you're not familiar with Darren, I think he's a tight end at the Raiders or something. Anyway, and before we analyzed the data, I said, y'all, we need to go meet these people that have opioid addiction. Let's go meet them. And so we literally took a field trip over to Davis Direction Foundation during one of the nights that some of the people were coming in for their meeting. And we met these people that have this horrible addiction, and really it put a layer of understanding behind the data sets, and it helped us know a little bit more about the context. It was really impactful. It also motivated the teams because they understood better about why they were doing what they were doing. That's one way to create stakeholder relations. There are definitely some more tricks, but I wanted to run that one by you. And then the third big bucket is personal attributes. So yes, you want to have the technical. Yes, you need to fit the culture, but you also need to have some personal attributes, something about yourself. So one, communication. I sort of see it as the 3 C's: communication, care, and curiosity. Communication, you got to be a data science storyteller. You got to be able to tell, you got to be able to explain, like, this is a data science product that I developed. Let me walk you through it. You got to be able to tell it in a way that makes sense. Number 2, they want people who care. They want someone that has passion, not just for what you've produced, and not just for, you know, not just for the work you do and the results of your model, but for your field, just for data science, period. They want people to have that passion to them. I remember when I was at Truist and the project was over, it was time to delete this model. I was like sad about having to delete this model because I had so much invested in it. I spent so much time on it, and, you know, banks, and they like require you to delete things all the time. And it was painful. It was painful to delete that model because I felt like it was something that I birthed, you know. So they want someone that has passion and that cares. And then thirdly, this is if I could tell you just one thing to remember from this, is curiosity. This is the number one attribute that I hear from hiring managers. They don't want someone that's waiting to be told what to do all the time. They want someone that's curious about the data, that's curious about how to analyze it and trying different ways and looking at it from different perspectives, that's curious about the results and how much impact they're going to have. They want someone with a high level of curiosity. Now, it's a bit of a double-edged sword in that I'm like super curious. I mean, almost to the analysis paralysis point. You know, like, I just want to keep running the models over and over and like, I can make it better. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to try it this way. I'm going to try it that way. But that actually makes you a really good data scientist too, is to have that curiosity. So one skill, curiosity, can kind of take care of a lot of other things, because you'll do a lot if you're super curious with your technical, with your cultural. You'll do a lot if you have that curiosity, it'll build. Cool. Any questions before I move to a couple of example interview questions? Any thoughts or questions on those three buckets? It was technical, cultural, and personal attributes.
Dr. Wright, we actually do have some questions logged up, but I'm going to save them towards the end.
Okay. Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, cool. Well, I'll go ahead to examples then, since Jack's making y'all wait, which is fine. I'm just picking on you, Jack. All right, so some interview questions as examples. Here's an example of trying to figure out if someone knows how to frame problems. So the hiring manager might say, you're trying to solve the optimization challenge. This is a real problem, by the way, that one of our clients used to ask. You're trying to solve an optimization challenge for airlines, hotels, reservation systems. How might you lay out the boundaries and position the question to solve? So they're trying to figure out what are you trying to maximize and or minimize, and what are you trying to hold constant? And so in this case, it's an optimization problem. If you're not familiar with LP, I know it says linear programming, but LP is not exact. Anyway, look up linear programming, LP. But an LP problem typically has constraints and something that you're trying to maximize or minimize. And so they're trying to get you to take a business problem and say, oh, well, in that case, I'm looking to maximize this. And they want depth. Like, it's not enough to say, like, I'm trying to maximize the number of people in the seats. Well, is that really what you're trying to do? Or are you trying to maximize reservations? Because there's a big difference. Or are you trying to minimize those that no show? I mean, really think deeply about how to frame some of these business problems. There's a lot more to it than you might think. Number two, aside from looking at your depth of thinking for problem framing, a second thing is they're looking for your creativity. So how do they ask questions that tap into understanding your creativity? They might say something like, imagine you're tasked with better understanding how to reach a certain target audience, but your results from your segmentation have come back bland. What would you do next? And they want to hear, they want to hear like, I would look at, I'm giving you vanilla examples, so it's kind of hard, but they want to hear that you would consider a different source of data, or that you would look at augmenting the data, not necessarily a different source, but augmenting. Or like I had a case where something like this happened, and I was looking at it at the customer level, and my boss said, why don't you look at it this way? And so it was like, oh, well, if I group the customers in a certain way, and then I looked at, like I turned my rows into columns, oh my gosh, and it totally worked. So they're looking for you to get creative about what you could possibly do and why. Not that you're trying to go on a fishing expedition and look for statistical significance if it's not there, but if you know it's there and you're not seeing it, what could you do differently? You know? So another example, if you're not familiar with moderators, I would strongly recommend you take a look at what a moderator is. But sometimes models, predictive models in particular, are muddied by keeping moderators in the model as X's instead of using them as real moderators. So that's another thing you could say is, well, I ran the model and it came back bland, but if I were to only look at people that, I don't know, fly first class, and then I analyze it, it's going to look a different way. Because maybe looking at those who fly first class versus those who fly, in the general seating or whatever it's called, maybe that's muddying the model. So they want you to think creatively and be able to rotate and summarize and augment. Those are the kinds of things that they're looking for in your response to assess your creativity. Number three, we have this kind of challenge in our field where things are not getting adopted. We create cool models and they're not necessarily getting implemented. So oftentimes a hiring manager will ask questions to find out, how is this person going to help me get this model adopted, get this data science product into operationalization and even better, productionalized? So how do I do that? They might ask you something like, you'd like to make sure your models are operationalized by the stakeholder, business colleagues. What are some ways to ensure this? And shockingly, one of the ways to do that is to, it has nothing to do with the model. So things like involve them up front, pull them in up front in the problem framing stage. Don't have a ta-da kind of model. And by that, I mean, don't disappear for 12 weeks and come back and go, ta-da! It should not be a ta-da. It should be like, here's what's going on, here's what's going on, here's what's going on. And by the time you get to that 16th, 12th, whatever it is week, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I expected that. This is very interesting and I can do stuff with it, but I did I'm not shocked, right? So avoid those ta-das, involve them early, and you have to build trust. And people are like, what are you talking about building trust? Like, this is about them adopting my model. I only bragged about myself so you guys would listen to this. You want to mess up, go ahead. But I'm telling you things that I didn't know at first, and it took me a long time to figure out. But you have to build trust with these business units, and some of the ways to do that are to walk a mile in their shoes. Sometimes it's literal, like I went out to the plant and walked around with closed-toed shoes when I was at Atlanta Gas Light to see how they use natural gas. Instead of just going and analyzing the data with the industrial customers, I actually went out to the plants and saw the industrial customers and how they use the natural gas. So adoption of your data science products and your models is more likely when you can answer these kind of questions in a way that I want to immerse the business. I will have, I will build empathy by being a part of their business. I will, you have to be able to say some of these things. So that's how they will assess your ability to help your models get adopted. And then a fourth big category is they want to look at your breadth of capabilities. And someone asked a question earlier about this, which I'm really glad you asked, because hiring managers will ask. So they'll say, here's a given scenario. How might you analyze this data? And you might argue, well, what does it matter? Like, what if this is a data robot kind of company where you just sort of push a button and they give you some results and you can pick the best model or whatever? You still need to understand what the different model types are and when to apply those. So that's a fourth big category, is they want to know your breadth of capabilities. Now, that being said, I know people that have the ability to run one type of model, but they're really good at it and they made an entire career out of it. You don't want to be a dinosaur where you only know how to do one thing. But if you know that one thing really well, sometimes that'll pay off, right? So hiring managers will often want you to have a fairly wide toolkit. I mentioned 5 or 6 techniques earlier. We've got pretty good depth on at least a couple, maybe 2 or 3 at least. So those are some of the top buckets of questions that you'll get from hiring managers. Oh, and by the way, I will do another plug for CAP. The Certified Analytics Professional, even if you have zero interest in actually earning the certification, the exam, or just studying for the exam, the study guide for the exam, is a fantastic way to practice the breadth of capabilities. The part that talks about how do you know when to use what, and it looks at it even in family of categories of analytics types, like these are all clustering, and these are all, multivariate, and these are all whatever. Just using the study guide and practicing that will help you answer that fourth question. Okay, cool. How are we looking on time? Are we good? Oh, we're right on time. Okay. So next step, some things that I suggest. What now? Number 1, get some great use cases. If you can get them in your current role or a prior role, that's usually ideal. Like the hiring managers want to know you got paid to do it, not something you just kind of did on the side, but at least some kind of, you got paid to do it. So your prior role or your current role is a great way to go. Now, if that's not an option, because that's like saying, well, you got to have a job before you can get a job. If that's not an option, you can also look at a nonprofit outlet. In the case of Technology Association of Georgia, we have that For Good initiative that I was telling y'all about. But there are other nonprofits. I mean, you could pick a nonprofit from, your hometown in Utah or whatever, and go to your favorite smallish nonprofit. Don't go to the American Red Cross. They have like a bazillion data scientists. But go to your favorite nonprofit and be like, hey, man, trying to build a use case. I want to help you out. Let's do both, right? And so what data do you have? What kind of business questions can I answer? And a lot of times they will let you just do it. You'll probably have to sign an NDA or something, but hey, it's free data science work, and more people recognize the value of that now. So that's the third idea, is leverage a nonprofit. And for those of y'all that are not, if you're in Atlanta, you can definitely join Technology Association of Georgia for the For Good initiative. But if you're not in Atlanta, there's a national organization called DataKind, K-I-N-D, all one word, DataKind. They're headquartered in New York, and they will pair you with a nonprofit so that you can do a cradle of the grave type of project. Or Informs has it's called Pro Bono. It's either called Pro Bono Analytics. Maybe you can find it, Zach, if you get a second. But it's called Pro Bono Analytics at Informs, or maybe it's called Pro Bono Consulting. I think it's Pro Bono Analytics. So those two outlets, DataKind in New York and Pro Bono Analytics, or Technology Association of Georgia Data Science Analytics has For Good too. So all three of those outlets are options to get you a cradle to grave type of use case. The other thing you can do is you can take some open source data and just play with it yourself, you know? So there's all kinds of data. I saw someone at a meetup that they used some kind of publicly available city data about potholes and how quickly it takes to get them, or how quickly they get filled. And so I wasn't sure what some of the other measures were. I don't remember exactly, but I thought that was interesting that they looked at different potholes, their location, how many times people had to call about them, all that kind of stuff to see the completion rate or time period. And then the last recommendation on use cases is run a hackathon. Like, even if you don't make it all the way through, just to be a part of one and try to get through one. I mean, like I said, it's too late now because we're in the finalist round, but Master Modeler Competition 2023 is a great way to look from the very beginning. And they're using real data with a real client to solve a real problem in foster care system. So they're starting from the very beginning and they're going all the way through, and even getting to see a little bit of the implementation of how these results will get used. So that's another, there are more ways now to develop a cradle to grave use case than there have ever been in my field. So hopefully one of these will work. Consider certification before you go on an interview. If you feel in the least bit like you need to brush up on your technical skills, practice data science storytelling. There are books on this. Bill Franks wrote one called Owning the Room, but there are books on this, and there are ways that you can just practice, like telling people that are outside of our field, you know, this is what I got, and does that make sense to you? And if it doesn't, then you probably need to work on it. And the last recommendation is, if you're not already part of a community, try to join something. And if you don't have a mentor, you know, build that mentorship into that community involvement and development. Now, how do you find a mentor? Sometimes you can just ask someone that you admire, like, hey, will you be my mentor? I already have my 10, and that's a lot. 10 mentors is really tough to juggle. I actually have 2 mentors that came to me through Women in Analytics, and I have other mentors that came to me through my university affiliation. You know, that I'm on the board at the MSA program at Georgia Tech, and I'm at UGA. Like, that's a, you know, they pay me. That's a thing. So you can find mentors through school, through organizations, all kinds of different ways, even on LinkedIn. And lastly, for candidates, if you are interested in a job, Birchworks has a ton of jobs. With the one I just posted today, to give you an example, it's 110 to 130. It's with a really great company. I love the hiring manager. He used to be at a major telecom. He's a great guy. We've already sent people over there, and he's already hired some of our previous candidates. And it's 100% remote. So that's a really good job. Then there are other jobs like that specialize in NLP, or the other jobs that are in different geographies, or that we have 2 that are coming up in healthcare. They look really good too. So any candidates that are interested, you can email info@birchworks.com. I told the recruiting managers that we may have some people emailing, so they're going to check the info box starting tomorrow afternoon. Hiring managers, if anybody is trying to hire, please reach out to me and I'll direct you to the right people on my team. And anyone that needs data or data science project work, we also do that. That's that SOW line of business that we do. So you can reach out to me for that. Cool. All right. I am excited about some of your questions and hope that I can answer them.
Oh, yeah, you have a lot of them queued up here. Let me go ahead and start at the top here. Okay, so you mentioned a couple of resources. One question came up for one of the resources I mentioned, you talked about a book within it. Was the book title Multivariate Data Analysis 8th edition for that?
Yeah, that sounds right. It's called Multivariate Data Analysis, and he's got a bunch of co-authors on there because everybody was trying to, get on the Joe Hare train.
Right.
So he might be like third or fourth author by now, but yeah, that's it.
Cool. Awesome. Next question here. Can you please describe at least 3 typical workflows in the data science industry? Inputs, outputs, purpose, and function. Yeah. Does the question make sense?
Not 100% yet. So an input being.
So some of the stuff you talked about within your presentation, as far as like the job functions for a data scientist, what candidates should expect. So like, okay, once they get there, what are the typical workflows? Like, hey, what do you put in? What do you put out?
Gotcha.
They're trying to connect the dots as far as the lingo.
So. I got it. Okay, so looking at IO and okay, so in the data science workflow, your typical inputs are business problems that people are asking or that you think should be answered. Now, please don't think I'm trying to make it clear that data scientists are not just order takers. Like people come over and I need this. Poof, what do you need? That it's both a push and a pull. It's supposed to be. Now, that being said, the less mature organizations are still just kind of taking orders, which is unfortunate, but I know that's a struggle too. It's hard to make it where your data scientists can define the kind of work that needs to be done. Oftentimes it comes from the business asking for work. So that's input number 1 is the business questions. Another input is different data sets. So the data that's needed, which you have to define after understanding the business problem, those kinds of data sets or data sets that you pull in from open source or other kinds of other paid sources. And then third is the tools and the platforms that are useful for analyzing data. Those are typical inputs. There are more, but those are the big ones. The outputs are usually models. And you don't want to like y equals mx plus b. You don't want to like give them that, but they typically fall into 2 categories. There are insights-based models that just inform. So the insights will say like, hey man, you're really trying to do this thing. You need to do this, this, and this, and that changes operations or the way the company runs. So insights-based typically make suggestions about what you can do differently to improve your business. The second big category of the output is solutions-based. And solutions-based models are usually an actual algorithm that gets integrated into a system for real-time decisioning. So to give you a quick example, you work at a manufacturing plant like Clorox, and you're concerned about safety. And so someone from data science builds a model. They integrate it into the system. Plant manager comes in every morning. What kind of disaster should I expect today? Okay, it looks like there's going to be a higher propensity for an accident, over in this section of the plant. Guess where he's going to be having his morning coffee, right? So that's the second. The first one is insights. The second one is more solution-based, where it's integrated into a system for real-time decisioning. Those are some of the outputs.
Fantastic. Hopefully that covered that one. The next question, how do you get recognized by a Big 4 company? And I'm guessing they're talking about FANG companies. But how do you get recognized by a Big 4 when you don't have a master's? However, you do have some work experience in a website portfolio.
So I'm going to give you a stat that you're not going to like. And this is from the Birchwork study. Let me see if I can find it real quick while you're asking me the next question. But I'll see if I can find it. There's something called the Birchwork Salary Report we call it the Birchworks study, kind of informally. And it has a ton of stats and information from several people that we've collected data over the years. And one of them has to do with degrees. And so you're not going to like this, but does anybody want to take a guess at what percentage of people in data science and AI have at least a master's degree?
Ooh, is it like 80%?
Some 80 and someone else said 85. 93%. Yeah, it's very good. It's very close, Lexer. 93%, or Levar, sorry, I can't read, have a master's plus. And data scientists, 12% have a PhD. Like, I'm nothing special. 40% in AI have a PhD. So it is very tough to get recognized by a top company without a master's. However, the way you could do this, you're not going to like, because then it's like, well, I might as well just get a master's. You have to produce thought leadership. And you can do this through a lot of different outlets. Like, you have to produce thought leadership, like what Jess Ramus is doing sometimes. Like, sometimes it's fluffy, okay, so I know that. But she does produce a lot of thought leadership. Allie Miller, A-L-L-I-E. Of course, I think she's got a PhD in AI or something. But Allie Miller produces a lot of thought leadership in her field. You have to produce thought leadership, whether that's in a podcast or that's writing a book, or, you know, again, it's a lot of work. You can't skate past an MS. You know, you pretty much have to either get a second level degree, or you have to really work your tail off to get known. Yeah, so
Nice.
thought leadership is, I mentioned that term without really defining it, but that's where you produce content that other people find useful and that you're contributing to the community of data science. That's like it's a tough thing to create. So Bill Franks, as another example, the guy that I was telling you wrote that book called Owning the Room, or Winning the Room, I think. But Bill Franks at KSU, Kennesaw, he produces a lot of thought leadership, just stuff that he posts on blogs or content on, I mean, some people call me a thought leader because I'm always posting some kind of content on, you know, different sources, but also my podcast is a regular, like every month I'm producing at least something. So it's tough, but it's doable.
Nice. Next question here. Do you have any specific examples for use cases that could be added to someone's portfolio, or that to help kind of get them through the door?
Well, use cases are usually very personal. So a use case, I mean, you would have to actually do the use case. So for example, an easy example would be if you are not working and you're trying to do at least something start to finish. It could be like, I'm going to go to this nonprofit and see if I can help them figure out how to get more donations. We actually did that with Enduring Hearts. They do, they extend the life of a heart transplant kid, because usually you only make it like 9 years and you have to have another heart transplant thing. Usually you can't get one. So usually you only live 9 years, which is sucks, because I thought, like, you got a heart, man, you're alive, you're good. No, it's only 9 years. Now it's 17 because of all the research they've done. But the project we did for them, we knew that they're a nonprofit, and so they're always trying to collect money, they're always trying to get volunteers, they're always trying to, you know, fill in the blank. So we did a project to help them understand who are the donors, which was a segmentation, who are the types of donors, and then secondly, what are the triggers, the things that encourage or influence or motivate people to donate to this kind of cause. So that would be a fantastic, if you don't have any other outlet and you went to a nonprofit and you asked for that type of use case, or you were to do that kind of use case and you bring that to the interview, that's a great thing to talk through.
This next question may be a little specific, but do you happen to know any interview questions regarding A/B testing?
I probably have some, but typically it would be like, give us an example. They don't usually like to give you straight up questions. They usually say, tell me about a time when, or give me an example, or how would you, work through this? Like, it's usually very dialogue-y type of entry statements. So if they're going to ask you about A/B testing, then they're probably going to say, explain a time when, you ran A/B testing, or that you did A/B testing, or you have problems with A/B testing. Or they may ask, what are some scenarios where A/B testing would make sense? And they're trying to get you to understand the concept of lift, like it's design of experiment, but it's also called lift, where this is scenario A, and this is where we were, and this is kind of results it produced. This is scenario B, this is the lift. Is it worth it to go from A to B? Like, because it's going to cost money. It doesn't make up for it. So those are the kinds of ways that they would start that kind of question.
Nice. Next question here, and looks like we're in the home stretch here. What are some typical tools analysts use to manage workflows from businesses requesting services, such as consuming models/products?
Yep. So some of the ways that they're able to manage it are not very good. I've actually tried to get several of my clients. We came up with this idea initially with a client that is a vehicle manufacturing, not headquartered in the US, overseas. And then I've used it at retail, and then another one that was a telecom, and a fourth company that's kind of hard to explain without just saying who it is. So it's a triaging method. And it's fairly subjective, but it's basically a data science project triaging method. Many companies have those kind of frameworks, but they're not using them very well. And how do I say this? Some of it has to do with politics, right? Like, who's yelling the loudest, who has the most influence over your department and your job, and those projects magically get done first, right? But in reality, what should be happening are there should be a triaging looking at the value, things like the value of this work, the implementation ability, the operationalization, the ability to make real change based on the results or the solution that's provided. There should be a whole set of dimensions that assess the criticality of a particular work product, data science product, and if it makes sense to even take it on to begin with. Did I answer that? Is that the intent of the question?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, it sounded like they were talking about like tools. I don't know if they were looking for actual product names, but like enterprise tools.
That varies. That varies a lot. I mean, some are AWS, some are Microsoft shops, and other companies are Google shops. And usually, if you're with Microsoft, like you're with Microsoft, and so you're Azure, you're AWS, and if you're Google, you're GCP, and but Python is almost always there, and SQL is almost always there. Otherwise, but I say that sort of hesitantly because don't like go become an expert in AWS or something. Like GCP, like they have similar functionalities. I don't want you to feel like I spent hours and hours and hours trying to get an expert on this when they're so similar and you can kind of learn them pretty quickly. Like, it shouldn't. Don't let that hold you back.
Yeah. And last quick questions here. Do you happen to know of a best site to format a resume for someone?
I do not. That's a good question, but no, I don't know the best. We sometimes refer people to individuals that do that for a living. That's a little gig or hustle that they developed, is like helping people get their resume in a good format. But usually your school, there's some debate about where to put the school. Usually the school is last, unless you're brand new, then your school is first. And one thing, I don't know why people are doing this, but don't make it impossible for us to find your freaking phone number. Like, put your phone number really visible. Don't make that a hard thing to find. So we're seeing that. And some people are wanting to just give an email or just give a LinkedIn profile. And that's not, you got to have your LinkedIn profile, your email, and a phone number really visible. I know you guys probably hate writing these. I don't really like to write it myself, but if you don't have a mission statement or a vision statement of who you want to be and why you exist and why you're in this field, go ahead and take the time to write one. There's a Franklin Covey thing that'll walk you through this process of creating a vision statement for a company, but you can also use it as an individual. Franklin Covey is a very long, it's been around a long time, good company, and it helps you with that sort of thing. So use that vision statement or some variant of it in your beginning. You know, have a few sentences about why you're interested in data science or why you're in this field, and to really show your passion. So can I give an example real quick, Zach?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So without getting into a ton of detail, I say that my reasoning or my objectives are to elevate data science, stimulate innovation, encourage collaboration while doing as much good as possible. Those are my 4 things. And all those affiliations I showed you guys, University of Georgia, the Birchworks, the TAG, Inform, and all the board service that I do, everything is related to those 4 things: elevating data science, stimulating innovation, encouraging collaboration while doing as much good as possible. Those are the 4. And that's what I'm about, and pretty much everybody that knows me knows that that's what I'm about. So have something that you're about, like be able to communicate that in the first couple of sentences on your resume.
Fantastic advice. You mentioned a certificate within the presentation as well. What was the name of that certificate?
It's called Certified Analytics Professional by Informs. So if you put in KITT by Informs, you should be able to find it pretty easily.
And last 2 questions here. This may have been answered in the interview, but in the presentation, but someone came late. What are the typical job interview steps, and will you need to code?
Usually you do need at least some level of coding proficiency, even at the senior level. We had a consulting organization that was doing a coding test for directors, y'all. I mean, directors, and there's a big company. The job paid $350, so it was a big job. So it's kind of like, well, do I really need to know how to code? Am I going to be doing that in my job? No, you're probably not going to be doing your job, but they want to know that you at some point have some level of proficiency in it when you're talking to your teams. If nothing else, it helps you get the respect from your teams as well if you're a coder. So yeah, you're probably going to need to code. And then the first question was, what are the steps? Is that right, Zach? They were asking about the steps. Okay.
Yes.
Typically, you talk to the talent acquisition or HR person first. And that's not really an interview. That's just like a screener to see, do you understand what you've put in for? Do you understand anything like, help us understand why you're interested in this job? Or usually that's just getting the stuff out of the way. Like they don't want you to go through the whole thing, get to the end and find out that it's the wrong salary, it's the wrong location, it's the wrong job, right? So they're just kind of confirming those sorts of things and confirming that you're interested and that there's an interest. So that's part 1 usually. The parts after that, it varies by company, but a lot of times it's the hiring manager, and then they'll have you talk to the team, and then they'll usually have you talk to their boss, or sometimes the hiring manager and then the boss of the hiring manager, and then the team under you. And then oftentimes it ends in a panel of some sort. So those are the typical steps. Nice. We had a company that was going through 7 rounds of interviews. And it wasn't just for the company, the candidate was actually saying, I feel like I don't, he said, I feel like I know everybody but my manager. Like, I feel like I need to talk to her some more. You know, I just want 15 minutes, like she can be sitting there drinking coffee, just 15-minute coffee or something. But let me talk to her a little bit more. So sometimes it's okay to do this too. Sometimes if the candidate doesn't feel that they got a real 360 view, it's okay to say, if I'm still being considered, can I please talk to so-and-so for just one more time? Like, just to make sure that this is the right, you know, that it's good for them and it's good for me.
Nice. And last question here. What is your core golden advice for career switchers and older candidates looking to break into this field?
Well, that's another one you're not really going to like, but I would strongly recommend a one-year MSA program that's going to help you. But that being said, the way to get in is typically in that field, you start doing the BI work. So if, say, for example, you're in supply chain, it's tough to go from being in supply chain to being on the data science team. However, if you're in supply chain, they're probably, or operations or marketing or whatever, but they're probably using some kind of BI, business intelligence platform. So try to get a piece of that, even if it's only 20% of your job. Try to get a piece of that and find out, like, how can I submit requirements for this? Or how can I get on the other side? I want to be behind the scenes person that's producing this report or helping generate this dashboard. So if you can get in there, then typically you can start immersing yourself while you're, especially if it's while you're getting a degree or something, which a lot of times you can do it online or certification. And then that will work you into that field. So I usually like to go in through the BI route. That's the easier route.
Fantastic. And I think one of the applicants or one of the attendees is trying to reach the email, but it said it bounced. Other than that, those are all the questions. It looks like it's locked. Are there any other final thoughts that you have for us tonight?
Yeah, just final thoughts are, this is a great time to be in data science. It's a great field. I've always loved the discoveries of it, and I always will love the discoveries of it. So it's a great time to be in here because of all the business problems we can solve, but also because we have a seat at the table now. Like, we're a part of the decision-making process in a fairly big way. So be proud to be in this community and pursuing this type of work.
Fantastic. Alrighty, and I think we'll call it a wrap here. Alrighty, thank you everyone for coming and attending today. Really appreciate everyone for hanging out here this late with us. I will be emailing out Dr. Wright's presentation to everyone who attended, and once the recording is processed, you'll be sent an access link for that as well too. Dr. Wright, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for imparting us with your wisdom, and thank you also for taking the time to answer everyone's questions towards the end as well too. And without further ado, I hope everyone has a wonderful night and see you guys next time. Okay. All righty.